Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. There's even a brand new Brigadier General tier where you can get a shout out on a Commander's Quarters episode that's dedicated to you. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So there are some really exciting spoilers coming out today on day 2 of spoiler season, but don't forget about the most exciting spoiler from yesterday with Tovolar Dire Overlord. And yes, I mean, that's probably not an entirely agreed upon most exciting spoiler from everyone, but it's my most exciting spoiler, okay? Finally, we have a werewolf commander to be excited about with Tovolar. Regardless, from earlier today, we've got some other exciting cards like Rite of Harmony, which, oh, please let this card be budget so I can use it. And we also got some new exciting curses like Curse of Shaken Faith. I know I really enjoy curses. Do you like curses? But in this episode, I'm going to be asking a different question because the question for this episode is, excuse me, did you order salt? So get ready for a ton of sodium because we've got what is potentially another salt-inducing commander. So this potentially salt-filled commander is of course the brand new Gisa Glorious Resurrector. Gisa is a 4/4 human wizard for 2 black. She has if a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. Well, that's not too salt-inducing. I mean, yeah, against graveyard-centric decks, they probably wouldn't enjoy that very much. But outside of those kinds of decks, that's not really all that big of a deal. Oh, but wait, there's more text. Let's read on. At the beginning of your upkeep, put all creature cards exiled with Gisa Glorious Resurrector onto the battlefield under your control. They gain Decayed. That's right, let's mass resurrect all of our opponent's creatures. Now, really quick, okay, before I get any further into this commander, let's just talk about a salt comparison. This commander is nowhere near as salt-inducing and overpowered as Tergrid, God of Salt. I mean, she's named God of Salt for a reason. Tergrid immediately gives you any non-token permanent an opponent discards or sacrifices right onto the battlefield under your control. This commander, like Urza, takes little to no effort to be incredibly broken and annoying, which is why Tergrid is the God of Salt. In comparison, Gisa Glorious Resurrector is most definitely a low-sodium snack. This is definitely a powerful commander, but not one that's incredibly broken like Tergrid. It actually takes some effort. First of all, even if you destroy a ton of your opponent's creatures, Gisa's gotta stick around until the beginning of your next upkeep for that trigger to get them back. If Gisa is taken out between now and then, well, you just lose access to all those creatures. Now your opponents do as well because they're exiled, but still. Also, there is somewhat of a limiting factor on those creatures that you are stealing. When you get those creatures, they gain Decayed. And Decayed, again, is a new mechanic from this set. It means that a creature with Decayed can't block, and when it attacks, you sacrifice it at the end of combat. So it's kind of like a creature that's temporarily yours. And you can't use it to protect yourself by blocking, so swing away. But again, when you do attack with it, you've got to sacrifice it, so yeah, then your opponents will get access to that creature again as long as they can get it back from their graveyard. So again, there are limiting factors to this commander that doesn't make it anywhere near as salt-inducing or broken as Tergrid. Tergrid takes 0 effort, this at least takes some. Now, I'm definitely not saying that this commander is not powerful, she most definitely is. Having the potential to gain control of all of your opponent's creatures, even if it's temporary, is huge. And actually, here in a bit, I'm going to be talking about some ways to make it not so temporary. And yes, stealing your opponent's creatures, even in this way with Gisa, can be salt-inducing against certain tables and against certain players. So, though by playing Gisa, you won't have anywhere near as big of a target on your back as if you're playing Tergrid, there's still gonna be one there. Regardless, if you do decide to build around this commander, let's talk about some ways to make the most of it. First up, obviously, massive one-sided board likes like in Garruk's Wake and Plague Wind can be huge in this deck. In Garruk's Wake's going to destroy all creatures and planeswalkers you don't control, and Plague Wind's going to destroy all creatures you don't control and they can't be regenerated. Now, these do cost 9 mana, but again, you're playing Commander, so you can get there. In combination with your Commander, it's kind of like a Wrath/delayed Rise of the Dark Realms kind of thing. Or maybe more so Insurrection because you kind of temporarily gain control of those creatures. Somewhat like all those things, okay? Obviously, it's a game-changing play to just destroy all of your opponent's creatures and then gain control of them. And if you already have control of some of your opponent's creatures, again, those are going to be spared from these spells, and on top of that, well, by casting one of these, you're going to destroy their armies, and now you can just swing freely at them. And then, of course, a less mana-intensive Wrath like Phyrexian Scriptures can really help out as well. It's a Saga, and its first lore counter says, put a ++1 counter up to one target creature. That creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. Its second lore counter says, destroy all non-artifact creatures. So it's kind of like a delayed board wipe, and again, this isn't going to save all of your creatures, but it can save your commander. Then you basically just destroy all non-artifact creatures, and then the next upkeep, you're gaining control of them. And of course, in Mono Black, you've got plenty of ways to destroy creatures, including some other more specific board wipes like Ritual of Suit, Yahenni's Expertise, and Hex. Ritual of Suit destroys all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less. Obviously, you're going to want to include board wipes that don't destroy Gisa because, again, you lose out on those creatures if you do so. Which, again, is kind of the entire point of the commander, to destroy creatures, keep her in play, and then get those creatures. So, again, although you'll just be stealing a lot of small creatures, that's fine. That's still a lot of value. Speaking of which, there's Yahenni's Expertise, which says, all creatures get -3/-3 until end of turn. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. My recommendation for how to use this card most effectively is to wait till after combat if you've got some creatures to attack with. Swing with your creatures, get some damage through, and some damage on creatures, and this can be even more impactful, taking out bigger creatures that have taken enough damage. And that's just a nice little bonus getting to cast an extra spell for free. Moving on though, there's Hex, which says destroy 6 target creatures. So, very simply, hey, I would like those 6 creatures in a play under my control next turn. Thank you. Next up, though, I do want to highlight a somewhat expensive card. I think attrition's around $10 or so at this point, but it is incredible in this deck if you've got the budget for it. It has pay a black, sacrifice a creature, destroy target non-black creature. It's going to be really hard for your opponents to essentially get anything in play and to keep it there because, again, you're essentially just giving yourself a supply of creatures with your commander. You sacrifice some creatures, you destroy more creatures that you would like more than those creatures, and then you get them next turn. Or sorry, I keep saying next turn, I mean at the beginning of your next turn, okay? Regardless, then say that your opponent plays an even better non-black creature. Okay, let's just pay a black, sacrifice one of our creatures that we stole already, and get that one. Yeah, this is a really effective card in the right deck, and there's a reason that it's over $10 at this point. Now, I did mention earlier that there are certain ways that we can get around that decay and actually not lose those creatures and keep them permanently. So to do that, first up I like to highlight Conjurer's Closet. Now this card's actually seen a good amount of reprints, but I believe it's still around $5, but it is fantastic with this commander if you can fit it in your budget. It has at the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. With these type of effects for this commander, make sure it says under your control and not the owner's control. So yeah, with Conjurer's Closet, essentially, even though those creatures that you have decay, you basically can just blink one at the end of your turn and then keep it permanently. It comes back into play on your side of the board, and there's no decay on it. Another way to do this is actually with a very old card from Tempest called Cold Storage. Again, this is an old card, so its actual text is kind of confusing, so let's read the Oracle text. It has pay 3, exile target creature you control, sacrifice Cold Storage, return each creature card exiled with Cold Storage to the battlefield under your control. So, whereas Conjurer's Closet is actually limited to just one creature at the end of your turn, this one doesn't have a limit other than mana. So you can dump a bunch of mana into this, exile some of those creatures that you stole, and then when you're ready, sacrifice this and bring them all back permanently. Next up, a somewhat slower but still effective version of this is Synod Sanctum. By paying 2, you can tap it to exile target permanent you control. And then by paying 2, you can sacrifice it and return all cards exiled with it to the battlefield under your control. So again, like Conjurer's Closet, this is a one at a time effect, but again, it can be incredibly effective with this commander. We also have some one-off effects though with things like Kaya's Ghost Form and Rescue from the Underworld. Kaya's Ghost Form is an aura and you can enchant a creature or planeswalker you control. It says, when enchanted permanent dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So this essentially completely negates the downside to decay, just when that creature attacks and has to be sacrificed, then you just get it back with this. And then Rescue from the Underworld says, as initial cost to cast it, sacrifice a creature. Choose target creature card in your graveyard, return that card and the sacrifice card to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of your next upkeep. So obviously for this to work, we do need a creature in our graveyard, but basically this is a way to reanimate a creature from our graveyard and to permanently gain control of one of the creatures that we stole. But even outside of trying to steal our opponent's creatures permanently, we've got other ways to make the most out of them having decay. For example, we can run cards like Thieving Amalgam, Zulaport Cutthroat, and Pitiless Plunderer. Thieving Amalgam says, whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So obviously in this deck, this can drain our opponents for a ton. And of course, it gives us even more of our opponent's things, saying at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may manifest the top card of that player's library. And of course, in Mono Black, there are plenty of Zulaport, Cutthroat, and Blood Artist type effects, so when your creatures die, you drain your opponents. So most definitely think about utilizing those as well. And actually, I just looked up Pitiless Plunderer, which is another fantastic value card for when your creatures die. It gives you a treasure every single time that happens. Unfortunately, Pitiless Plunderer is like $14 now. Long gone are the days when this used to be less than $1. So Wizards, please reprint this uncommon. Thank you. But aside from that, and aside from cards that work well with this commander, let's now talk about how Gisa can actually be very impactful in other decks. And one commander that can be incredibly impactful with Gisa is Marchesa the Black Rose. Marchesa has Dethrone and gives other creatures we control Dethrone, and whenever a creature we control with a ++1 counter on it dies, return that card to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. This kind of flips the script on decay and makes it into a good thing. We take out our opponent's creatures and steal them with Gisa. They come into play, they have decayed, and then we attack the player that's got the highest life total, and then they get ++1 counters on them. They die thanks to decay, but because they have those counters on them, they come back at the beginning of the next end step under our control. Quite simple, isn't it? But yeah, this can basically help us permanently steal those creatures, and I think Gisa is going to be fantastic in this kind of a deck. Next up, another Grixis commander that might want to utilize Gisa is Thraxamundar. It has, whenever it attacks, defending player sacrifices a creature, and whenever a player sacrifices a creature, you may put a ++1 counter on Thraxamundar. A deck built around this commander generally has plenty of ways to make opponents sacrifice creatures, so have fun stealing them. And of course, there are plenty of mono black commanders that can take out a lot of creatures as well, like Hirobi Death's Whale. It says whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, destroy that creature, and believe me, there are plenty of ways to target a lot of things very quickly. Another commander that likes to take out creatures is Toshira Umezawa. He has, whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from play, you may play target instant card from your graveyard. So basically, hey, I've got this spell that destroys a creature. Okay, cool, that creature's gone. Oh, cool, I got another spell that destroys a creature. Okay, here you're gone. So yeah, there are plenty of commanders out there and plenty of options when it comes to adding Gisa into a deck. But now it's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Gisa Glorious Resurrector. Gisa is most definitely powerful, but I am glad that they put those limitations on her. She is still going to be salt-inducing to some players and to some tables, and there is definitely still going to be a target on your back if you're playing her. But that target is going to be nowhere near as big again as a somewhat similar commander, if you can call it that, Turgid. Again, in comparison, if Gisa is like a low-sodium snack, Turgid is the Great Salt Lake. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.